세 번째 강연은 Center for Innovation in Regulatory Science라는 CIRS의 마그다 부자르 박사님께서 준비를 해주셨습니다. 마그다 부자르 박사님께서는 드러그 인포메이션 어소시에이션 및 ICH 회의를 비롯한 주요 과학회의에서 의장을 역임하고 계시며 현재 융복합 의료제품 규제 정책 및 과학 분야에서 8년 이상의 경력을 쌓고 계십니다. 오늘 강의 제목은 How can collaborative research support and shape regulatory policies and system strengthening 이라는 주제로 강연을 해주시겠습니다. 오늘 직접 참여는 못하셨고요. 영상으로 강연을 들어보겠습니다.
Okay, wonderful. Good morning. Good morning to you all. It's really a pleasure to be here. My name is Magda Bujar, and I'm the Senior Manager of our regulatory program at the Center for Innovation and Regulatory Science. And it's really my pleasure to be here today to tell you a little bit more about CRS, but also how we work with agencies and companies around the world, really to try and hopefully bring stakeholders together and advance regulatory science and policies. But really in my presentation, I wanted to discuss some case studies of how CRS works collaboratively to try and answer the question, how can collaborative research support and shape regulatory policies and system strengthening? So in terms of the agenda today, I wanted to cover 3 topics. First of all, just to introduce CRS a little bit and the importance of collaboration. Secondly, to provide some examples of collaborative research and how CRS has been undertaking this in the area of quality, metrics, and alignment. And I will tell you a little bit more what we mean by those, and then finish up with some next steps and conclusions. First of all, starting with this slide on CRS, we are not independent not-for-profit group, which is a part of Clarivate Analytics, a subsidiary. We operate independently as a not-for-profit, and our mission is stated at the top. It's really to maintain a leadership role in identifying and applying scientific principles to help advance regulatory, but also HTA policies and processes with an ultimate goal of helping to facilitate access to pharmaceutical products globally. The organization has been around for more than 35 years, so you might have heard of it under its different names as well as some of the individuals, the CRS founder, Professor Stuart Walker, and also Dr. Neil McCausland, who is the scientific director. And really, the organization has been for more than 35 years bringing together global industry, regulators, HTA bodies, and payers in a neutral atmosphere to help really address key issues through workshops and research projects. And I will talk in more detail exactly how do we achieve this mission. The way that CRS is governed is through its advisory committees. Again, this is a group of individuals that meets twice a year with CRS to help us really advise on different topics and workshops when it comes to regulatory science. So it's chaired by Professor John Scared and Vice Chair Professor Hans-Georg Eichler. But we do have a representation both from agencies, but also from companies and other specialist advisors. And as I've said, the role for them is to really ensure that our work is neutral and of interest to many stakeholders around the world. The way we operate is also through a membership program. So our flagship program is called the Regulatory and Access Program, and is one that is open to really any pharmaceutical company, particularly those engaged in research and development of new active substances, as many of these topics are most relevant. And really what we deliver through our program is listed in the box at the top highlighted. So we organize international workshops where we bring together companies and agencies, both to educate, but also come up with concrete recommendations. We organize insight seminars and webinars such as this. But we also undertake research projects. So CRS undertakes research on its own, but also in collaboration with companies and agencies. And a lot of that gets published through peer-reviewed journals or R&D briefings, as well as other tools that we implement for decision-making. But the idea of the regulatory and access program is really to bring both, again, the regulatory part, both of organizations and agencies, together with the HTA, again, to ensure ultimate alignment, and that it is built in during the development of medicines and enables fast regulatory approval, but also reimbursement. We work with many agencies around the world, and the regulatory agencies are listed on this slide. So you can see many from around Africa, Americas, both North America, South, also Latin America, then Europe and Middle East, with many of the national agencies from Europe as well. And then finally, Asia, where we do have many interactions with agencies in Asia and Southeast Asia. And the way, what that means, participants, is that these agencies either participate in our workshops and present or participate in discussions. They also participate in our research activities, so surveys or desk-based research that we undertake. And also they participate in advocacy activities. So CRS often works with agencies directly to advocate for best practice, but also help to build capacity. And of course, one of the key agencies that is of interest to many of you today is Korea. So you may notice that it is currently missing from the Asian list, although if I just to explain a little bit on the history, is that we have been involved with the Korean agency perhaps more in the early 2000s, so 2013, I believe they did participate MFDS in our workshops, but that was not something that occurred more recently. But just to say that CRS would be really interested to re-engage again with the agency if that was also of mutual interest. I also wanted to mention HTAs because we are, as I've mentioned, very active in the regulatory, but also HTA parts. So we do also work together with many of the HTA agencies, particularly in Europe, Canada, Australia, but also increasingly we are mapping out different systems and also engaging with more newer HTA agencies in Asia and also LATAM. So again, this is also an area of interest for us, both to work with those agencies individually, but also where there may be possibilities for alignment. We have three key pillars of our activities, which are listed here. So CRS, actually, there's only 10 full-time individuals working within our organization. And so anything we do has to be quite focused. And the three pillars of our activities are listed at the top. First of all, metrics. So we are interested in evidence-driven insights to really help measure and improve company and agency performance. Secondly, quality. And by quality, I don't mean quality of the product, but more quality of decision-making, both during the development process, the review and reimbursement process, and what quality aspects may be built into that in order to ensure really a clear, transparent, predictable, and consistent process. And then finally, alignment, and I spoke about this already. It's really about aligning stakeholders, ensuring global convergence across agencies, but also in individual countries where there may be different systems for regulatory and HTA. We also operate in 3-year research cycles. So the research cycles for 2021 to 2023, where we are kind of in the middle at this moment, and they are listed at the bottom. So again, these were developed in collaboration with our advisory body. And the first theme you can see is globalization. So really supporting different regionalization and reliance models, which are really built upon trust. Secondly, new ways of working. So what are the new challenges that agencies and companies have? So also opportunities, of course, for example, a new product focus such as ATMPs, new evidence generation techniques like real-world data. And then finally, outcome metrics. Again, we are always interested in what may be built into the process to ensure efficiency and effectiveness, and ultimately, hopefully, and also ensure a good outcome. And one of the areas here is, of course, involving patients throughout the process, and really what impact does patient involvement have on the decision-making of the stakeholders. And as I've mentioned, collaboration alignment is really the bread and butter of what CRS does, and it's really at the heart of what we do. We are aware that there is a growing ecosystem of collaboration around the world, and nobody works in isolation because it's more efficient to work together. But also, I think one of my favorite quotes really here is that if you want to go fast, you should go alone. But if you want to go far, you should go together as a group. And I think this is what this graph is really about, is ensuring different interactions and collaborations at different levels. So what we can see here is a landscape where regulators are working together with regulators, but also with HTA agencies. And there are many different networks that CRS is also helping to contribute to. And of course, many academic institutions, not-for-profits and other academic groups really are also helping to support these collaborations. So we do believe these are more and more important. And again, because of limited resource that agencies have, but also, of course, with COVID, I think the world, in a sense, is getting smaller, and we are all learning how to work better together. But with that, really, I wanted to introduce some examples of how CRS has been working together with companies and agencies, again, to help support the pillars of our research. So I'm going to start with this initial slide, which is quite detailed, but really what I wanted to get across is again, the history of CRS. We have been around from the early 1990s, really, and have been operating in the area of metrics for all these years as well, where in 1998, CRS really championed the identification of the milestones throughout the regulatory review process. And really, we have been benchmarking agencies around the world really since then, delivering both insights for the agencies, but also on the different trends. So hopefully you would have seen our regulatory briefing, which is the picture on the right-hand side, which is now one of our flagship publications, where we analyze approval timelines across 6 major agencies. And we are very much interested, which I will talk a bit more about, having other agencies join or having other agencies analyzed as part of that briefing or other future briefings. So this is really what the top graph shows, is really what research we have been undertaking based on data from public domain as more agencies introduce transparency measures. But we also do have programs where we directly support either companies through industry benchmarking project, and that's how our emerging markets metric has started. But increasingly, we have been working directly, and I've mentioned this before on the graph, which has all the agency names. We have been working with many agencies around the world also to help support their performance measurements, capacity building, and also meeting WHO good benchmarking tool indicators as part of the tools that CRS has implemented. So really just to highlight that we have been doing a lot on metrics, and this continues to be one of our research areas, really working with agencies. So as I've mentioned, the milestones that we've identified at the start were actually identified jointly through discussions with agencies. And all this work really, again, highlights that we do not work in isolation. We collaborate with companies and agencies to really help validate and advance our work. One of the case studies I wanted to highlight is specifically on Health Canada, which has been one of the first agencies that CRS was benchmarking from 2003. And really some of the initial benchmarking has highlighted, and you can see that quite a large backlog of applications. So the bar graph shows in gray the workload in backlog versus workload not in backlog, and you can see that gray bar being quite high, but also the black the black dots that show the new active substance median approval time, what that was, again, with a backlog of applications, and how it then decreased. And I think this has really been driven by a decrease in the queue time that the agency identified. So if I may just take a quote from that research project, is that this was from Bob Peterson, who was the DG at the time of Health Canada, is that participating in the benchmarking activities is really a strategy for Health Canada. And the text highlighted really says that this data has given factual information to the agency to be able to identify improvements and ask for a resource based on an independent case study. So again, this has enabled Health Canada to go to their ministers and ask for additional resource in order to be able to improve the process. But the key point here is having the right data for that. As I've mentioned, we continued this benchmarking of Canada compared to other 5 major agencies today. And this is a snapshot from one of our latest R&D briefings that hopefully you would have seen, which shows median approval time over the years for Europe, US, Japan, Canada, Switzerland, and Australia. And I think it shows quite nicely that the times are converged quite well. There's also been a decrease in Switzerland approval timelines as a result in efficiencies to their labeling activities. So again, something that CRS has been involved with. And we are at the moment working on a publication with the agency on that topic. But also interestingly, we did note some increase in Australia approval timelines, and that seems to be also likely due to COVID. So again, this publication CRS undertakes annually, really independently of the agencies, by collecting and analyzing these metrics, but providing them back to the different organizations, really that with a note that these are really independently analyzed metrics by CRS that stakeholders can use for their own purposes as well. And as I said, we are very much looking forward to having more agencies as part of this analysis again in the future. What I also wanted to show is a snapshot from our emerging markets program. So this is a benchmarking program with industry where we also show what the time to roll out looks like for other agencies around the world, especially those that are growing or emerging. And this graph shows the time to roll out, median time to roll out for new active substances launched from between 2016 to 2020. And we can see the countries that we currently benchmark on the left-hand side, and brackets how many products are included for this analysis and how many companies have provided data. And then the individual process milestones. So the median approval time in first market, the submission lag to the emerging country, and then the approval time in that specific country, and then the gap to launch. And the key message really here is that there are still challenges to roll out to many of these emerging countries. I think South Korea is in fact one of the quickest ones, both because of a short submission gap and companies can go there earlier, but also very quick and predictable approval times. It's interesting, time to launch is quite a bit longer for South Korea. And again, we are aware of the HTA activities, but it's just, I think, still quite challenging to see how long that process can take. For example, for Algeria, where because of the backlog, it can take many years to get a product on the market. So it's definitely still a challenge. And with that in mind, CRS initiated a program to really work with agencies around the world to help build performance measures and support implementation of WHO GBT indicators. So this is a program that's co-sponsored by the Gates Foundation also, where CRS is working with agencies directly. So again, we're very much interested, hopefully, to build that base of regulators that we work with. But just to also explain a little bit our model for working with many of the agencies, it all starts again with having good trust and relationship with the agency. So we do that either with a PhD student and have a relationship with them, and often that's a PhD student that is working together with CRS, but is also working at the agency, so they may have access to data. Or perhaps, if not a PhD student, a champion with the agency, again, who has access to information. Our initial step often working with an agency is to try and identify and map out their processes and practices. And we have a country report, an OPRA country report that we use to do this. And we also have a tool for collecting metrics for that. So really our model is to be able to first analyze this information, share it with the agency really to discuss potential opportunities for future change, or where there may be recommendations for future change. And often what we do at the end is actually publish all this information with the agency jointly, really to have a strategic piece of information of what future improvements may happen. So if you do have a look on our website, you will see a number of publications really that, as I've mentioned, describe the process, but also provide recommendation to the agency, being co-authored by the agency as well. And maybe just one example I wanted to provide here is Anvisa Brazil, again, which has been an agency. If you look at the bottom left, from 2004, we have been benchmarking them for our industry metrics program. But more recently, we have also started to work with the agency directly, where we collected metrics on the process and had a joint publication with Anvisa when they changed their pharmaceutical law. And it also helps them to embed many of the tools on benefit risk and decision making. We were really pleased that from 2020, Anvisa started to publish their approval timelines and public assessment reports on the website. So this really enables now us to add Anvisa to our briefing going forward and to include them as part of these publicly available metrics from key agencies around the world. And this is just a snapshot from a very initial publication we undertook only last month, and we are currently in discussion with Anvisa, showing really the timelines for Anvisa compared to the other 5 regulators I've mentioned, so Europe, US, Japan, Canada, Switzerland, and TGA. And what this shows is both the median approval time and the variation around the median as well. And I think it shows nicely how the Anvisa timelines have been going down and becoming more consistent. But again, this is just an initial analysis we are looking to build on and validate together with the agency. I also wanted to mention some of the other research areas that we undertake in addition to metrics, and it's really about building convergence and trust across agencies. So we do believe that by having same technical guidelines, similar risk tolerances, and decision-making approaches, that really helps to increase opportunities for regulatory pathways. So it enables information sharing, work sharing, reliance, and recognition. And really, this process of convergence is at the heart of this. So CRS has been supporting the convergence journey from a point of view of working with ICH, and we undertook a project on behalf of ICH looking at implementation of Tier 2 ICH guidelines, and this is something that South Korea also participated in. So again, thank you to colleagues for your active input. And what the reports that are now published on the ICH website show nicely in orange an increase in adequate implementation of ICH guidelines by regulatory members. So this is specifically Tier 2 guidelines, and that there has been an increase in implementation from about 50% to 61%, comparing 2019 and 2021 reports. So again, really encouraging to see implementation and convergence happening. We have also earlier on worked with APEC to help survey characteristics of good review practices. So this was a project undertaken on behalf of APEC, where CRS surveyed 14 regulatory agencies in Asia on the current use of good review practices. And again, this is an example of how CRS works both with companies and agencies in order to publish their research and really to help embed good review practices going forward and recommend them as a way forward. So if you haven't seen this publication, I would definitely recommend to visit our website and have a look at that and some other ones. But really, I mentioned implementation of tools is key. So another aspect that CRS really champions is the development of different regulatory science tools, really both about understanding what pathways are in place. So we have an Atlas tool for that. We've also developed scorecards to measure what a good review practice or a good submission practice means and how that can be compared across agencies and products. And then on the second side are our decision-making tools, both to enable decision-making processes in general, but also focusing specifically on benefit risk assessment. And we do believe that agencies having these tools in place, as I've mentioned, helps to increase trust across stakeholders, increase transparency, and also increase the capacity of agencies as they look to meet many of the sub-indicators of the global benchmarking tool by WHO. Just wanted to finish with a final case study, which is really for South Africa. South Africa has been one of the agencies we've been working for many years now, also through 2 PhD students at the moment. South Africa has also been implementing many of the CRS tools around benefit risk and also benchmarking their processes. And we've just recently done a joint publication with SAPRA comparing their use of Reliance to really clear the backlog of applications. And it's also been really encouraging to see that now South Africa has just reached maturity level 3. So again, a really interesting case study on how the agency has really committed to improve even over COVID to really help clear this backlog and improve their processes. And a final example just to bring in, because I've mentioned regional models, is that we have been working regionally in Africa as well to really help understand what may be some of the ways to increase efficiency of regional models based on industry and agency view. And this graph shows a snapshot of responses from agencies on what they see as some of the key benefits of Zazibona models. So that's a work sharing model in Africa, and how that's helping agencies to build capacity and information sharing. So again, really encouraging to see this, and we are working with those various regional bodies to find out what else may be done to help increase efficiency of these different pathways. So with that, I also wanted to share with you some of the priorities that we have for 2022 and 2023, again, across companies, agencies, and academia. So I've touched on a number of those, and really we are interested to find out whether perhaps there may be other priorities or other work that CRS perhaps should be tackling, again, to help meet our mission of facilitating access to products. So do feel free to get in touch after this meeting as well. But really just wanted to finish off with a conclusion to say that CRS has been working with agencies and companies around the world for more than 20 years to help support regulatory policies and system strengthening. This has really been through our workshops to debate and discuss topics, but also independent surveys and research to collect metrics and understand challenges to the regulatory and HTA landscape. And then finally, to advocate for change and help agencies build capacity to help ensure really evaluation of performance is happening, and there's implementation of regulatory science tools. And just a final note to say that we would really be interested to understand the challenges and opportunities within the Korean regulatory and HTA systems more in the future. So I really look forward to the outcomes of this conference and also the next steps. But with that, I just really wanted to thank you for listening to this presentation, and also a big thank you to the organizers of this conference, especially Dr. Elisa, for this kind invitation and opportunity to talk to you today. I wish you a great conference, and I look forward to any questions as well. Thank you so much.